So this is the wrap up. I just want to say something before I don't mean at all to embarrass her at all, but Michaela and Emily just asked me a question that I thought was just so cool. She said, "Who's the guy over there in the blue?" Okay. So I turned and looked this direction, and I'm looking for the guy in the blue. And I'm thinking, there's several people wearing blue. And I said, "Which one?" And she said, "The guy doing communion." So I turned around, I looked again, and I said, "Are you talking about Isaac?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Why didn't you just say the 6'8" black guy?" Give me a good hint. The guy in the blue? There are better, there are better hints than that. This is like, okay, I don't get it. Go to the next hint. You're going to get less money, but you get a better hint. But I thought just how really born again in thinking that is. That we're not identifying people by things that have been so painful in our past. It would have just been so easy to say, "Hey, who is the gigantic black fella over there?" She said, "No, who's the guy in the blue?" So, well, hello, Evie. Always good to see you. I said hello to Anna this morning when she was worshiping up here. I said, "How are you?" And she went, here we are wrapping up a calendar year. So how many of you feel like 2014 was about a week and a half? Yeah, it was about a week and a half, It just went so fast. And then if you lived through this year and you had you had some hiccups happen, life slows down during hiccups, doesn't it? Life gets slower during times when we're having to process with thinking. When we're just living it through. Hey, brother. It's our friend Eric over there. It's good to have you back. So, when life is like just moving through at its own pace and everything's going pretty well for me, it flies by. It's a week and a half. But when hiccups happen, things slow down. You start to experience hours, not days. When it's flying by, it can be like days and, man, that was a long week. It's TGIF kind of thing. But when a hiccup happens, it starts to move by the hours. And so we find ourselves saying things like, "Man, I'm glad that day is over." Right? Sometimes life doesn't have hiccups. Sometimes it just punches you right in the gut and you have no breath. And when that happens, life doesn't move by hours, it moves by minutes. We sit there and have a lot of thoughts, and we think it ought to be this afternoon, and we look at our watch, and it's 45 minutes later. And we have thought this thing over, whatever punched us, over and over and over and over again. And we just cannot seem to get to sundown. And then in the winter, sundown doesn't help, does it? It's only 4:30. And you'd like to go to sleep, but you can't. Yeah. Unless you live where Steve and Lydia live. Then you can go to sleep about 6 o'clock, and nobody will know it till the next morning. The only things up out there are critters and the moon. So, how do you, on this calendar system that we live in, this every year we have a new year, and we've adopted this thing primarily out of the domination of the Scriptures the biblical scriptures as probably the most dominantly read literature in all of history. And so from that are spin-offs of it that other religious groups will have their own, because you have to have your book now. You know, Jesus has got a book. So if you're going to have your own religion, you got to have a book too. You got to get your own book. So everybody's got a book. Everybody's got somewhat of a Savior. And they read their book, but they always go back. There's only one book people are comparing their book to. So we have this system that comes out of this book of really in the beginning in Genesis. And when we see the creation, that there was a sun, the moon, and there was a day. And then we had a week. You know, at some point we started keeping months. A lot of that had to do, Jimmy, with astrology and astronomy, probably most likely. Is that right? Astrology, yeah. And so then we wind up with years. And once the law of Moses was given as this beautiful picture of God's love for humanity that He gave to this tiny little Jewish nation, that as they celebrated it, the rest of the world would get to watch them celebrate God's love, and they would see how much God loves them too. But unfortunately, that thing took a turn to the left and became us and no more. And so now we have those systems set up to where we celebrate certain things in certain ways. I'm on it. Y'all know that happens. So, yes, yeah. So, we now live in this thing called let's have good. What do we say on Sunday night or Monday morning? Hey, let's have a good week. On Saturday morning in the South, it changes to, hey, let's have a good game. And it doesn't matter which town you're in the South. They all think they're going to win that day. Well, except for West End. But that's okay. They have great parties. They tailgate great at Vandy. So, and we say at this time of the year, we're going to have a good year, 2015. And it's amazing how God gives more prophetic words during the last 2 weeks of the year than He does any other time of the year, according to everybody on the internet who's got a word for next year. And all of them seem to be the same. 2015 is the year of prosperity. 2015 is the year of Jubilee. But so was 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. I think we retell it just for those who didn't get in on the last one. I'm not really sure that God's repeating Himself like that every year. But so we get into this calendar thing. And then hidden in the prophetic picture that God is painting for all of humanity is this one that's coming that is called the bright and morning star. All of a sudden, the time that we're used to keeping shifts and becomes not a watch, not a little increment of tick, tick, ticks, but it becomes someone. He is called the day. He is called the day. And the invitation we're given is not to step into a great 2015 or a better 2015, but we're given the invitation to step into a life. A whole new life. A day. A person. A being who is not from this world, who doesn't tick to our beat. Compared to the structures and the systems and the cultures we have today in this human systems and cultures, He's like an alien, not of this world. in the midst of our years and months and days and hours and seconds, into it steps one who is the day himself, and there is no night in him. The sun doesn't have to rise in him, nor does it set. He never sleeps nor slumbers. I've been giving a lot of thought this week to the word regret. Now, this may just be me. And I may be the only one at the end of every year that could make a couple lists. All the highlights. You know, Facebook, they're real kind to us. They made us a little thing to where all we have to do is hit yes, and they will send out, they've chosen our pictures and everything, the highlights of our year. It's amazing. And once we see what they picked out, they don't know us, so we actually know whether it was a highlight or not. Some things we look at and go, yeah, that was pretty good. Other things we look at and go, boy, I wish they hadn't have said that. What do you do with regret? What do you do with stuff you cannot go back to 6 months ago or 9 months ago and do anything about that time when that someone said that to you for the last time and you just exploded on them? Everything you'd been thinking for the last 27 Thanksgivings came out. Right after the turkey. And told them what we knew they needed to know all the time. And that's just what a sorry relative they are. And reminded them of all those things that they shouldn't have done in the past. And it's amazing that when we're speaking for the Lord about things someone has done wrong, He helps to remind us of the stuff they actually did to me. It's amazing how that happens. I usually don't get mad at somebody and tell them what they did to my cousin. I tell them what they did to me. So, I thought we'd take this morning and look at what to do with the parts of 2014 that we'd like to see not repeat in 2015 or go away. So while we're dealing with 2014, if you're like me, I have reruns. You know? When I go to Decatur, and I went this week to spend a couple days with my mom and dad, there's only one channel on my dad's television. And on that channel, there are only 3 TV shows. The Waltons. What was her name? Dr. Quinn. Medicine Woman. And Little House on the Prairie. They show them on, what channel is that? Does anybody here know? Over and over and over and over, all through the night. Is that Encore? Okay. It's continual. It will be through the 7-year tribulation if there is one, and the 1,000-year reign if there's one of those two. That's all they play. And my daddy laughs at every one of them, and he'll say, "Watch this, Virginia." And I'm sure my mother's over there going, "Watch this." I have watched it every day since 1947, Bill. "Watch this, Virginia. Watch what John Boy's about to do." He just laughs. And I'm sitting here thinking, who is this guy? And what have you done with my grouchy old daddy? I think when y'all prayed for him when he was so bad sick, some other stuff happened too. Yeah. I mean, neighbors he has never been able to, doesn't even want them near the house. They come over now and bring him fruit cake, and he's just like, "Well, come on in here and sit down." Even my mother's going, don't get her to sit down. Sit down. We love you. It's like, Lord have mercy. Maybe it was the anesthetic. He has forgotten everything before the last year, I'm going to tell you that. So, here's what I want to say, just a few things. We're not going to be here long because we gave Bonnie the day off. Wasn't that good? Well deserved. So we have all our little ones with us this morning. And Beverly's got her little one with her too. Jerry Wayne. Okay. Regret is the fruit of trying to forget about what you've done or what someone has done to you. Okay? Regret is the fruit of trying to forget. So let those two words be your highlight words in this. Regret and forget. It's the effort to forget. And the effort, the time we spend trying to forget about something we're looking at, as long as we're trying to forget something, we're looking at it. We're looking at it. As long as we're trying to regret and forget it, we're staring at it. We're working on it. And regret is the fruit of that effort of trying to forget what, that's another yellow highlighted word, what you've done. Freedom is the fruit of remembering. There's your freedom goes with remember. Not what you've done, but who you are. Okay? So I'm going to try to say these through again now. So, regret is trying to forget what you've done. Freedom is remembering who you are. It's remembering who you are. That's what freedom is. Okay? So, and there are just a couple of things I just want to say about this. The first one, key to moving away from trying to forget and moving over to remembering who you are. From trying to forget what you've done to trying and forget what's been done to you. Both of those places cause regret. I either regret what I have done, and we usually regret the most because usually what we've done, it's going to get better. Regretting what we've done, trying to forget keeps us focused on the very thing we're trying to forget. But when you step out of time, year, month, this calendar thing that the earth and the sun that the creation keeps up with, and you decide to live by faith in the day, who is not a calendar or a schedule, but is God, is the spiritual existence, its eternity. In Ecclesiastes, God breathed this, for He has put the calendar in your hearts. No, we know that's not what it says. For He has put eternity in your hearts. He has put another world, a different realm, a different life in our hearts. Not trying to forget about 2012 or forget about 2014 or forget about whatever it is. We get so focused on what's in us that we lose sight of the greater truth, which is what we're in. Is it true the kingdom of God is in us? Yes. Do you know what's even higher than that? You live not in this world, but in His kingdom. And that is not a printout, a computer printout of members of churches. Or even the good attenders. Especially those that come on Wednesday night. We ain't got a chance here. We can't do a redo on Sunday night or Wednesday night. But we'll give you plenty of chances to cook and feed a bunch of people. That's our redos. The first thing for me that helps me not live in regret, and I'm not telling you I don't live in regret. I'm telling you it helps me not live in regret, is remembering that I am not bound to 2014, 2015, 2016. It's going to get better. I live in the day Himself. Isaiah 10:27. I hope this is right. I hope this is right. Isaiah 10:27 says, "In that day, the yoke will be destroyed from your neck, the burden will be lifted from your shoulders, because you've grown so fat." That's what it says in the NIV. The word fat there, though, in the Hebrew, is the word for like animal fat, grease, oil. It's talking about the anointing. It's talking about Jesus, who is the anointed one. In that day, in Jesus, He who is the day, who is the bright and morning star of the day, and there is no night. In Jesus, where you live, Lorene, there is no night. There is only in Him. That's the reality that we live in. And we walk by faith of walking in that place, and not by the sight of having to walk in the new calendar that Hallmark's put out so we can decide whether our year was good or not. Or walk in the sight of having the same relative tell us every month that we're just like our granddaddy, we're useless, we're just meaner than a snake, and we're never going to be anything else. That is not your home, nor your truth, nor your identity, nor anything about who you and I are. Anything. The second thing that helps me is remembering, and this is so important here, is remembering what Jesus told Nicodemus. Nicodemus had a life history. He was a very prominent man in Jerusalem. A powerful religious and civic leader in Jerusalem. He had everything to lose by following Jesus around with all these cripples and drunks and prostitutes and people who were looking for handouts and hungry folks and homeless folks. Nicodemus had his reputation to lose by following around someone they're calling a king who's not wearing a crown. Nicodemus has on better clothes than Jesus does, better clothes than his entourage, and yet he, for some reason, cannot stay away from Jesus. And so he goes to visit Him. When? That's right, Steve, in the night. He sneaks around behind the bushes. He goes and finds Jesus, and he's saying, "Hey, can I speak with you?" He sneaks up on the day and says, "Can you make my next calendar year better? Can you make my life as I know it better? Can you change the religious misery I've been living in?" Which is no different from the regular misery that the prostitute he didn't want to be seen with was living in. And he says, "How can I get this?" And Jesus says, "Nicodemus." Is it John 3? Kyle, is that up there? And Jesus says, "Nicodemus, you must be born again. You're living from the wrong life, Nicodemus. You're living in the wrong calendar. You're living from the wrong day. You must be born again. You're going to have to begin to see yourself in a different way. I assure you, unless someone is born again, and Jesus said, unless someone is born again, he cannot see. The word see there is the same word for experience. You can't be experiencing the kingdom of God if you're living from this calendar Jewish, whatever it is, or if it had been Gentile, it would have been Gentile life you're living from, because that is not the origin of your birth or your existence. There is a birth you experienced before your father and your mother gave birth to you. You're going to have to... Normally when we think of born again, we think of a word that's telling us something else needs to happen in front of us. Right? You're going to have to do something. It's a do-over. It's something you get a chance now to do again. You're going to have to be born again. But Jesus is going to explain again differently to Nicodemus. Go ahead, Kyle. I assure you, unless someone is born of water and the Spirit, he points to a different birth. Now, when we think of being born of the water and the Spirit, we think Jesus is telling him about something he needs to do in his future. But he's not. He's telling him about something that's already taken place in his life. Nicodemus had already been born in Adam of the water, the Word, the water, the Word Himself. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And that Word created all things. And that Word is the water. Even in Ephesians, that Paul tells husbands that they're to love their wives as Christ loved the church, washing them with the water of the Word. He's saying, Nicodemus, it's not something you need to do tomorrow at synagogue. It is something you need to remember that has already taken place. You're not of this world. You must be born again. You're going to have to get out of thinking that your mother and daddy's names are Buford and Thelma Lou. And you're going to have to understand that you've been born of the Father and the Son and the Spirit. Your creative birth. You're going to have to start living by faith. You're going to have to fix your eyes on things not seen and not on your birth that you think is seen. You're living the wrong life. You're living the life of a young man that your parents gave the name Nicodemus, and you need to be living the life of a young man that the Father knows your name, Revelations 5 says, and you and the Father are the only ones that know it. It's called a white stone name. You're living the wrong life, Nicodemus. You should be walking by faith in what cannot be seen and not by sight in what you are seeing. Now, am I trying to tell you that we're starting a new movement to get rid of the calendar in the U.S. government? No, that's not what I'm saying. And nor is your calendar you're going to hang up on your refrigerator the Antichrist nor the Whore of Babylon, okay? None of that is true about your calendar, all right? That's not the point. The point is, the calendar that Nicodemus was living in on a daily basis was not going away. That's not what Jesus was preaching against. Jesus was explaining to Nicodemus that he is living the wrong life. We are meant to live a life that cannot be seen with the natural eye. We walk by faith and not by sight. We fix our eyes on things above. We fix our eyes on things eternal. We fix our eyes on Jesus, not on 2015. Now, can I use 2015 as a tool? I will. I will. Let me tell you how I did that. On December the 1st, I started thinking, it's come to the end of the year, I looked at my list. Anybody here have a list? I looked at my list. I checked off all the things that I got done and said I wanted to do and all that kind of stuff. And then there was all that stuff that was not highlighted in yellow. And one of those was, I was going to eat healthy all year long. Okay, let's go and just talk about it, all right? I was going to eat healthy all year long. And I did. Right up till June the 3rd. I don't know what happened, but I crashed on June the 3rd, and I took to eating stuff that, phew, I have hid from hope for 6 months. And sometimes I put pictures of my food on Facebook, and you people tag her and say, Hope, do you see this? And then I get a text message private that y'all don't see that goes, do you not know that I have friends? June the 3rd, I fell off the wagon. And I ate like a crazy man. Thank God for Kenya, where I lost 22 pounds and came back thinking it's a fresh start. It was not. So in December, I saw my highlighted in yellow stuff that I didn't get done. So I decided right then, yes, 2015. Before I said 2015, I said, today is the day. It was, until I remembered that Thanksgiving was in 3 weeks. This is like mid-November that this happened, you know. It's like a week, and I'm going to be at my mother's, and there's dressing. And that is not on Hope's list. That is not on anybody's healthy food eating list. So I prayed about it and felt the Lord gave me a little more time. Yeah, till right after Thanksgiving. And then I remembered Christmas. And so, here I am. 2 days, I guess, maybe, 3 days after Christmas. And today is the day, right? No, January 1st is the day. In the afternoon, after the black-eyed peas and the fatback and the gravy. A man has no life if he does not have gravy as a part of it. You see, I do use these years. I do this every year. Normally, the first 21 days in December, I'll fast some things, and then I'll pray about what the next year's going to be like. This year, the Lord had me do it the first 21 days of October, and that has been hard. You know, I thank God I didn't have to start all this stuff till 3 months later. But it's right up here on me the afternoon of January the 1st. After dips that will not go to heaven. You know, some people make those little dip trays, you know, and they put multiple dips in them, and none of those dips are going to heaven. But I'm going to. So, I will use the year. But if we get focused on a life that can be seen, touched, smelled, tasted, boom, 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 and we don't understand that beneath that, before that life is a life that cannot be seen, a life that cannot be touched, a life that cannot be smelled, a life that is seen with the eyes of faith. Let me just tell you, it does feel good to check off one of those things on your list. But it feels not good to not check off one of those things on your list. The only place where any lasting peace is going to happen is in that place we're told to look at where moth cannot eat and rust cannot eat things away, and that's things that cannot be seen. So, now, if you come in here this morning and you're in one of those places where you've been punched right in the chest, you can't find air a lot right now. Okay? The best two things that are happening for you right now are two things that you will probably try to hide from. Time and people. There was a long time ago now, when I thought that the best way for me to get peace is for something to change quickly. The older you get, the more you realize that those things you cannot make change quickly. And that the only thing you have that's going to help you is time. There are many things that only time is going to take care of. It's not because, I'm not talking about the time like the daytime. I'm talking about the time himself. Some things can happen with a miracle just like that. Some things happen with a miracle, really long one. Just because a woman laying in a floor who has never walked gets up and starts walking, and we'll call that a miracle, and a woman who never walks and stays in her wheelchair, but more people come to life because of what's on the inside. This woman's walking on the inside, and we say she's lacking her miracle. I'm going to tell you something. Jesus was a miracle before he was hung on a cross. He was a miracle as he was being hung on a cross. He was a miracle as they put his dead body in that cave, and he was a miracle again as he rose from the dead. Our ideas of miracles sometimes, if they don't pass through what the Father and the Son and the Spirit look like, it doesn't matter what they look like in Reading. We don't compare our lives to things that can be seen. We are born of a life that cannot be seen. And if the dead are raised and the blind eyes are open right here in front of us in a split second, I'll be the first one dancing around this place. And when we bury her at 97 and she's never seen one thing in her entire life except for Jesus Himself, except for people like she's seen only people the way that God sees them, then I'm going to dance around this place too and celebrate her life. Because a miracle is not something we know a miracle to be. It is something God knows a miracle to be. I want to give you an invitation. It's not my invitation. It's one that God gives us to step into the day, the real calendar, the real new year. I want to give you an invitation to begin to find your identity, not in the things of this world. When I say beginning fresh. Every day I get up and start my whole stuff over again. He does. His mercies are new every morning. So every day I get up, and yesterday no longer exists. The third thing, the last thing I want to tell you, is I want to give you an invitation to build your Ebenezers in the right places. When the children of Israel were struggling and trying to find their way through this wilderness, they would get thirsty. And they would cry out to God, say, "We're thirsty." And they'd grumble about it a little bit too. I have found that most of my prayers include a tad bit of grumbling. Even if I don't say it out loud, it's like I don't think God hears it, But He knows I'm grumbling a little bit, So, they'd cry out to God and God would say, "Okay." And He'd give them water. And then they would take stones and they'd stack them up, kind of like a pyramid sometimes, kind of like a tower sometimes. They would stack these stones up, and that would be a memorial there. And they would name that place, that stack of stones. They'd call it the place where we got water. The place where God gave us water. Then they went on down the road and they got hungry. And they cried out to God, and God gave them food. And so they would build these stones there, and they'd call that place the place where we were hungry and God fed us. They never named their memory places. This is a place where I almost starved to death. This is a place where my wife left me. This is a place where I failed in business. This is a place where I fell off the wagon with God and said, "I don't want anything to do with you" for 7 years. This is a place where my marriage has just been blah for years, and that's all it's ever going to be, and I'm just going to live out like that. They never named their places what was wrong with their life. They always named their places what God did. Now, I want to encourage you, first of all, to not even get into looking back at 2014. You say, "Well, there may be some good stuff there that would give me encouragement if I look at it enough." Yep, you can, but if you line that trophy up, you're going to have to line them all up. And you will, because they're all located right up here in this trophy case. So I want to encourage you not get in looking back. But if you're going to, I want to encourage you to name your memory stones by the right name. This is the place where God delivered me. This is the place where I got married. Look at Val's young'uns. They're thinking, is he ever going to finish? We'd like to go smooch. They're newlyweds. They can drive and make out. They're newlyweds. Brother John and Miss LaQuetta do it all the time. They're newlyweds. You know, if you're going to look back, you better name the things that have happened in your life by the right name, or you're going to live in that wounded spot, and it will become a cesspool that we go back to all the time. And anytime something happens in the future that smells or looks like that pile of rocks we made, we will go right back to it. We'll have its language. We'll talk about it. It makes us feel a certain way. It changes our direction. We forget the day we're in. We forget where we are right now. And right now in 2015, we may still be living February of 2014. And we'll live in regret. We'll live in the past. And we'll all sit around then over breakfast and we'll tell stories. We'll one-up one another like them old boys in Jaws did when they were showing each other their scars. Well, I've got one for that. I tell you, I did that even after I was here. I did that a lot. And finally, one of the shepherds here one morning, we were sitting there and he goes, you know, I'm just really tired of hearing about how bad your life used to be. I said, well, I think you need some orange juice or something to perk you up a little bit. And he was thinking, no, I think you need some of the day. Get you out of your past. Get you out of believing something about you that's not true. The more you remember who you are, the less that will show up. So, regret is trying real hard to forget, but in doing so, you're actually remembering. And it's about what you've done. It's about your performance. But freedom is about remembering not a performance, but whose child you are. Look, there ain't a one of you in here whose daddy can whoop like mine. My daddy whoops in circles. Well, he did, till I got bigger than him. Then he would he'd say, boy, get over here. Now bend over. Be real still. But he'd whoop in circles. He'd make me go out in the yard and get my own switch. I'd come back with like a dandelion. Here you go, Daddy. I know this is going to hurt you more than it hurts me. He'd go out there with a chainsaw and bring a limb in. And he'd grab me with his left hand, had the switch in this hand, and then we would square dance. And we'd go just like this, because I would run as fast as I could. And then after he'd turn it on me, swap hands in midair and catch me in the front, coming this way. And I'd start backing up then, going like this. My mother never really whooped me. The worst thing my mother did was put mercurochrome and methylate on my skint knees. Who knows what I'm talking about? That is medicine from the devil. Nobody in here under 40 or 30 knows what it is unless you have some kind of medical background. But if you don't, it is it not, Linda, from the devil? I mean, anything that you have to start blowing before you put it on is not from God. And you'd go, even before when it was getting close, you'd already start going, just like that. Am I not telling the truth? And then you can only say two words, blow mama, blow mama, blow mama. You can't talk. It's bad. It's like a whooping. But you know what I never worried about? That at the end of the day, if I'd had my worst day in the world, the worst day on the planet, and I'd have wrecked that bicycle 3 times when they told me I wasn't even supposed to ride it, and skinned up every knee I had, and was yellow from here to here, which one was yellow? My thiolate was yellow from here to here with my thiolate on both knees and elbows, and got home, and my mother told my daddy I disobeyed everything he told me to do. I never once worried that they were going to change my name to Smith. What I did may not have been settled from day to day, but who I was never negotiable. And you do not have a better deal with your parents than you do with God. Your struggle to get through 2014 from day to day might have been difficult, but never at the end of the day was the Father saying to the Spirit, let's change His name. Let's put her in a different family. Never. Ever. It don't matter what happened. Jeremy, that's a little weird looking. But brother, we're with you. All year this next 2015, you have kidnapped Anna's baby doll. Somehow it doesn't go with the tattoos. I don't know.